I'm going to show you what a functional blood analysis looks like from a real paying patient who's hired me to consult with them to get to the bottom of their health issues. As a functional health practitioner, we're looking at this from the functional lens. I'm going to show you the optimal ranges that we're looking for across a variety of different testing parameters. I'm going to take you through my analysis and interpretation, and at the end of it, what this patient in particular can do to address their underlying issues. For the coaches and health professionals who are looking to be a lot more than just simply coaches and are wanting to dive into the realms of functional medicine, for physicians who are also wanting to expand their capacity as a professional, and this is lifting the veil behind what practitioners like myself do. You can take a lot of value from it, and also for other future students of mine within Trinity or Zion that want to understand actually what type of skill you can build to and what it looks like if you wanted to hire me to consult with you. So what I'm going to end up showing you is this in the end, and all the different dysfunctional components of the analysis that we have identified: thyroid, GI, red blood cell, gallbladder. We're going to go through major body systems and the major underlying issues that this particular patient is going through, particularly with his lipids, inflammation. He's an older patient, male, he's 51 years old, and there are some medium to more serious risk factors that he has that we definitely have an urgency to intervene on, given the status of his bloods and nutritional status, hematology, iron panel, etc. I will show you. But the severity on this one, the seriousness on this one is quite a bit higher than simply just trying to make things optimal here. We are actually trying to extend the lifespan of this patient and keep him around for longer, because his lipids in particular and his inflammatory markers, blood pressure and hematology all are signaling to me that there are some pretty serious or soon to be serious underlying problems if they go unchecked. So let's start off with the goal. This patient has some rheumatoid arthritis pain, but their symptoms, actually another additional factor that I want to mention to you is they're actually working with a naturopath right now. So you're going to see me untangle and manage when another practitioner has come in and given suggestions and advice, and how do we manage this concurrent practitioner or health professional support at once when that other practitioner and their advice and suggestions may not actually be up to par or may not be very effective in the analysis of yourself, or in this case, me. If we go to his diet, we are seeing snacking. I identified that as a red flag, which I'll explain later. And we're seeing actually a plant-based approach here. Vegan meals is the predominant source of nutrition for this client, and that was actually recommended by the naturopath. And so I'm going to untangle that a bit later. He is seeing some symptom improvement, but there are some reasons for that as well outside of the plant-based. Avoiding gluten, dairy, processed foods. You can just pause this video if you want to see his foods he's eating. Generally, this is actually quite good. We are actually seeing bone broth, slow cooked. That's good. And there is some small consumption of meat products, but given his later nutritional status, which I'll show you why I don't think this is the smartest, most sustainable strategy for this patient. This patient is 103 kilos, 198 centimeters. They have a somewhat lean body composition, moderate to mild overfatness. And one drug that they are on is prednisolone, which is for the rheumatoid arthritis, but that is being titrated down and also is also there to help with the rheumatoid arthritis symptoms, which is probably one reason the plant-based diet was suggested, but we're going to break that down. Some side effects with this drug that you want to be mindful of, with contraindications, with other supplements that you may guide your patients and clients on, is these. So fluid retention and weight gain being one of them, but this is being weaned off. Obviously, unless you're a physician, you shouldn't be touching this. So we want to work in conjunction with one another to best support the patient here. All right, from here, I'm actually going to make this video as if I'm speaking to the client. His name is Wayne, and I'm going to be from here speaking to him because this video is actually for him. So one of my blood analysis options is I do an analysis and I make you a pre-recorded video instead of doing a live one-on-one, because the live one-on-one consult is the most premium and is not always accessible to people. So this option that he's gotten from me is the most accessible financially and allows more flexibility if the client doesn't want to get on a one-on-one call. So that's what I'm about to show you right now. I'm going to get straight into it. I'm going to speak directly to him, and you guys are going to see behind the scenes what the practitioner view is and how they speak to their patients and clients and how I do it. So now we're going to begin. Oh, and bonus symptoms are fatigue, brain fog, and heartburn. All right, Wayne, so the following video is to now help you guide you through the bloods that I've looked at. I haven't heard from you in regards to the last couple of questions that I asked you, so I'm just going to go off based off the information that I have so far. That's why it took quite a bit longer for this to get to you, is because I was waiting for some more information, but I'm just going to go ahead and make sure you receive this, and there's still going to be a lot of very helpful information in here that you can use to improve your quality of life. So the lens that we approach this with as functional health practitioners is the lens of proactive preventative health. Understanding that the ranges, and I'm about to show you that you saw in the blood analysis document that I sent you, are based on optimal ranges. We are looking not to wait for things to become dysfunctional and out of traditional ranges, but to be proactive and to operate in a tighter, more research-based, evidence-based, up-to-date set of principles and parameters and a data set that enables you or the human to live as highest quality of life as possible while minimizing the risk of disease and morbidity as effectively as possible. By the end of this, you're going to have a set of what we call nutraceuticals. These are nutrition, and you'll see some lifestyle, but nutrition-based interventions that you can, if you like, utilize to improve the quality of your life, improve your symptoms. And I'm going to be particularly taking a proactive approach into future Wayne, meaning the father Wayne who wants to be around for his children and grandchildren for many years longer, but also have health span, which is the quality of those years as well. So that's the lens that I'm looking at it from, considering the stage of life that you're at now. I'm going to break down not every marker, but some of the major ones, explain them to you, the science of it. I'll do my best to break down it into simple terms for you, but it'll be educational for you. And then you'll have the document in your Google Drive that you can use to accompany this too. Just to take you through the blood report, just for some context, you don't have to fret at all about the implications of this report when it says a risk of dysfunction. Because these are based off, while they are somewhat accurate, they need human interpretation. And so I'm going to be doing that now. So when you see things like metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, these are degrees of likelihood based off a complex set of algorithms and a big data set that we use. And so I'm going to add in the subjectivity to that now so then you can know what to do with it. But some flags that we have: atherosclerosis, which I'll explain soon, some possible thyroid, gut. That's why I asked you about your gut to see if you have any gut issues, metabolic health, and also blood pressure and possible anemia. These are things I'm going to talk about with you now. So the first thing I want to begin with, actually going to start with uric acid. This is like a leftover chemical that your body makes when it breaks down something called purines. Purines are basically like the building blocks of your DNA. And they're also in lots of the food you consume as well. So think of them like the body's crumbs from recycling. When we see this high, I've put some information here for you to read in your own time, but we see this high, we actually see an increased risk of things like, as you can see, rheumatoid arthritis that presents as a marker for this chronic inflammation, and increased risk for atherosclerosis, cardiovascular disease, and stroke. So these big three, these are underneath and associated together, and comprise of some of the biggest risk factors that you are currently going to be exposed to in this season of your life. And so minimizing this is going to be a very big focus of this conversation today. And so we're basically putting a little bit of a picture together of what is the actual probability of rheumatoid arthritis, because I know you were getting a diagnosis. Well, I did want to give you some confidence, or at least some clarity on that in conjunction, when you see this marker of uric acid combined with ESR, eosinophil sedimentation rate, which is an inflammatory marker, when you see that high, it doesn't tell us what inflammatory condition you have. You need more specific testing for that, but it tells you that there is something going on. There's a little bit of a fire going on somewhere in your body. Inflammation is not bad. It is produced all the time, frequently, to deal with immune insults, to deal with when you're training and exercising. But it's the chronic exposure in particular that is problematic. And so that is indicating to us here that, okay, possible rheumatoid arthritis, something we can deal with, but good to get some indication. And another thing that's really important is this thing called T protein, total protein. This is an indication of digestive capacity. When we see it being lower, we see the increased risk for or association with something called hypochlorhydria, which is low stomach acid. And your stomach makes hydrochloric acid. It's really important to digest and assimilate nutrients. We can give you all the supplements in the world. Well, I won't say that. We can give you a lot of supplements, particularly mineral-based supplements. And it's really important that your gut is acidic or your stomach is acidic enough to be able to digest and break those proteins apart so it can be absorbed. When we often see total protein being low, we see some type of digestive insufficiency or inflammation. And so that is why I asked you about whether you're experiencing gut symptoms, because bloating, gassiness, even the brain fog is somewhat of an associated gut symptom, is indicative and correlated with low total protein. So then I might be guiding you or educating you about apple cider vinegar before your meals, chewing and breathing, just like really free low-hanging fruit that you can do to improve your digestive capacity so you can then break down the nutrients in your food more effectively so then you can address the nutrient deficiencies that are contributing to the bigger issues at hand, because they have these downstream consequences. You know, it's something as small as like chewing your food more, chewing at least 25, 30 times, slowing down when you eat because eating in a stressed state changes all types of chemical processes in the body that undermine digestion, which undermine nutrient absorption. So you're not what you eat as much as you are what you absorb. And we can see this total protein being an indication of potential absorption problems. So I can help you with that later, but when you get back to me if there's any gut symptoms. But if you did have gut symptoms, I would be considering, a teaspoon to a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in some warm filtered water, half a cup, 5 minutes pre every meal. I would be taking away the snacking as well. Why I take away the snacking, and I could see because you were snacking before, to improve your gut health and your metabolic health. It would take a long amount of time to explain all the details, but 2 reasons. One, there's a migrating motor complex in your intestine, which kind of sweeps away the intestinal contents and the debris, if you will, that build up in your gut. And when you're snacking constantly, you actually don't give as much opportunity and time for that street sweeper to go through your gut and clean things. And that's where things can build up and they can ferment and they can even produce gases that contribute to gut symptoms. And so not snacking is a really helpful tool, and it's a strategy, but it's also not even just a strategy. It's something that we typically adopt for majority of people, unless you're, for our athletes, for example, who need to consume more. But that's not the case for you. And so for you, Wayne, I would be taking away snacking and putting all of those additional foods that you eat in between meals at your meals. You feel fully unsatiated for longer, and you won't have consistent insulin and blood glucose spikes, which are causing your pancreas and your beta cells in your pancreas to work more frequently and harder, which can down the line contribute to more inflammation and lesser efficient organ system and pancreas and insulin and blood glucose, which can be a precondition to things like type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance, which can then be a precondition to your bigger diseases, your cardiovascular disease umbrella. So that goes to say, one change that I would consider is taking out snacking, putting your meals all together. Let's continue. What do we have next? Albumin. This is a liver protein, and we are seeing albumin on the lower end here. This is another indication of hypochlorhydria, low stomach acid. So I'm putting these pieces together, and it gives more evidence that, okay, we should probably make a change with snacking, with taking 3 deep, slow breaths before every meal. I don't know how it sounds to you to do something like that if you already do it. Most people don't. But I have meaningfully improved digestive symptoms with client patients by doing that, including myself, but particularly with patients when we slow down and drop the heart rate, drop the blood pressure, divert a bit more proportion of blood flow to the gut, to the stomach, reduce cortisol, a whole bunch of cascades of things going on. That's just a tip of the iceberg that are going to be helping them with digestion, breathing, slowing down, some apple cider vinegar, and that's that. We don't have to get into complex. We could do like digestive enzymes and things like that for supplements, but I just don't have evidence yet for whether that's needed for you. But as you age, the human ages, digestive capacity becomes less effective. So it puts more emphasis on supporting that system by even doing things like digestive enzymes. So if that is something that we can explore and is something I consume myself and get very commonly with my client patients. But I just need to know a little bit more. Magnesium. Magnesium, to put it into perspective, I would consider magnesium a lifetime supplement for the majority of people. It's incredibly important in energy production. It's incredibly important in such a vast array of chemical processes that regulate hormones in particular, neurotransmitters, and every single energy chemical reaction that makes ATP, that makes energy in your body via your mitochondria. So what do we say all that to say? Good job with your supplements. You're taking magnesium according to your naturopath you're seeing. However, based on your body weight, it's very likely not enough. And we can see that by looking at your bloods, and we can also see that by the milligrams per kilogram of body weight. We generally want to aim somewhere between 7 to 11 milligrams per kilogram of body weight for magnesium. That's going to sit, I did the math on it, that's going to sit around 900 milligrams for you. Now, your current 2 capsules a day is getting you, how to look at your supplement, is getting you 300 milligrams of a combination of chelate, orate, and glycerol phosphate. But we have to look not at the top line, you have to look at the equivalent magnesium. So some people don't know, they realize actually equivalent magnesium is the actual magnesium in it. So that's why it totals 300 there, 280, 10, 10. So it's mostly just the chelate. I would be upping this to 2 caps times 2 per day. So that would get us to 600 milligrams. Why I wouldn't jump all the way to 900 is because I don't know your gut tolerance yet. And we know if someone's taking a little bit too much magnesium is they start to get loose stools. If you get diarrhea, loose stools, when around the time of taking more magnesium, it is likely that because it can draw more water in. There's other types of magnesium that can minimize that. Our magnesium glycinate can be helpful for that, to minimize that from happening. But one change you may make is going from 2 caps to 4 caps to improve your magnesium status, because it is just not enough. And that's not even I said 7 to 11 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. 900 milligrams is somewhat in the middle. So we're not even there yet. We're just going from 300 to 600. And you can take them split dosage. If you get loose stools, you can take half in the morning, half with your last meal at night. Or you may also trial doing all of it at night, because magnesium can help break down catecholamines and hormones like adrenaline, which can actually have a calming effect on your nervous system. We know that magnesium has a calming effect, so it can help you sleep as well. You may want to try that, see if you notice any benefit. You can even combine that with something called L-theanine, 200 to 400 milligrams per night. I haven't put this in your document, just a little side note. Can be really helpful for sleep and calming your body and nervous system, particularly if you have caffeine a bit too late. That's one change that I would consider there. Another common indication for us for low stomach acid and gut issues is if you have low zinc status. But low zinc is really important for the immune system. If there's one thing to remember, it helps make white blood cells. And so addressing a zinc deficiency, it's one of the most common deficiencies I personally see. Iron is the most common deficiency in the world. And then zinc is personally, empirically, one I see very, very, very often, and something I look to improve. But if we have some type of gut issues, then supplementing with zinc, it can be not as effective. But it is something that we will put together in our plan here for you. If anything, for this one, it's not getting sick as often and as long. You can think of it very simply in that way. Now, coming to some of the bigger heavy hitters now, we are talking about your lipids. Now, this is a very big topic to explore, so I'll try and be as efficient as possible right here. But when we see lipids, people know HDL to be good and LDL to be bad. So cholesterol is actually very important. It helps it's a compound that's made up of hormones, or that helps make hormones. It's an important precursor to make hormones. Many hormones like testosterone and many of the other sex hormones as well, females and males, and vitamin D. It's important as a building block for cortisol. So it's really important. Cholesterol is really important. And I'm not going to demonize it here, but I'm going to put it into its appropriate perspective. So your body makes it from the liver, and it's like a fatty, waxy substance that also transports important things. Every cell membrane needs it. But when particular types of cholesterol, or rather their blood marker derivatives, LDL, HDL, and other particles associated with that, when they build up and in too much of a higher amount, we can begin to see increased associations and risks of atherosclerosis, which is plaque buildup in your arteries, which is partly as a result of, we think, this cholesterol buildup. It's a very complex mechanism I'm attempting to explain very carefully, but it may be helpful if I show you as well what's going on. So if we come back here, we see HDL being low. Now, HDL is like the cleanup crew. It picks up and removes excess cholesterol. So we don't want that too low because then you're not picking up excess cholesterol. Then we have LDL, which helps deliver the cholesterol. And excess LDL promotes atherosclerotic plaque to build up in your arteries, which can then be contributors to strokes, heart attacks. But it's not as simple as HDL being good and LDL being bad, because there are certain sizes of these HDL and LDL, which is why I actually got you to do your ApoB protein, which we'll talk about in a second, which is actually high, which is really insightful for us. So in your document, I have the implications of high LDL, which are increased atherosclerosis, cardiovascular.
But you may or may not know that cardiovascular disease is actually an umbrella term for all diseases that basically affect the heart and its blood vessels. So I'm show you that now. We know that it is the leading cause of death worldwide. Now that's easy to do because it considers more than one disease, but it also exceeds cancer by nearly double. And so the significance of this is very high here. It's coronary heart disease. So here you see the stages of atherosclerosis. You see the plaque build up, that yellow, fatty, waxy substance. That's partly the lipids, the fat, the cholesterol, part of it, building up and blocking that artery, which slows blood flow, puts resistance to blood flow, which then contributes to a whole host of diseases that people end up in hospital like this, and their lives end up being never the same. But we can get ahead of this. We can definitely get ahead of this. There's an injury, there's an inflammation to the tissue. That happens usually quite early on in somebody's life. Again, this can be managed, this can be improved. We see the deposit of the fat. Then we see these things called defense cells, which take up the LDL. So if we have a lot of LDL being produced, then we have a lot of it being deposited, is what we typically see anyway. These small oxidized LDL particles start to accumulate in the arterial wall. Plaque ends up building up. Then smooth muscles migrate, and they're susceptible to rupture. And when the rupture happens, which can also be driven by and contributed to by high blood pressure, which we'll talk about, Wayne, because your blood pressure is elevated, not to a significant extent, but to an extent that would be a meaningful contributor to the worsening or the higher risk profile of this occurring. Again, we're going to get on top of it. Rupture, blood platelets, they clump together. And when the rupture happens, the platelets come because they're trying to, put out the fire. They're actually, the platelets are the good. They're trying to help the actual issue going on to form a blood clot so other bad things don't happen. The vessel becomes blocked. And that's when a heart attack or stroke literally basically occurs around this moment, as you can see here on angiogram. Anyway, I thought it would be good to show you because, we talk about disease and like what's actually happening, cardiovascular disease. Well, that is the implication to the lipids building up, particularly certain LDL particles building up and triglycerides building up and HDL being low. And so when you're thinking, well, why am I spending and investing hundreds of dollars into my health, whether it be practitioners like myself or whether it be the supplements you're taking, it is for the effort to improve what I just showed you and the likelihood of it happening going way down.
And then we come to ApoB, which is quite high. What this does is it facilitates transport of lipids through your bloodstream. It is it's more specific and it's a more powerful indicator of coronary artery disease. And the APO tends to mirror the LDL. So when we see LDL high, we tend to also see APO high. because of the LDL being elevated, but it gives more specificity and can even pass out some genetic issues that are going on as well. It gives us more evidence to assess your cardiovascular risk profile, which is really important because that's one of the biggest risks of dying and disease at your age. But really thankful that actually we can see this now rather than in years to come, because we can meaningfully, we usually almost always can meaningfully move this marker and improve your internal status of your health to reduce the risk. I wanted to show you some research here. A heart attack or myocardial infarction isn't a disease, it's the final stage of atherosclerosis, a stepwise process of blood vessel hardening, narrowing, and inflammation. Years of accumulating harm eventually result in a fully blocked coronary artery with no oxygen-rich blood flowing through the blocked artery, and the heart muscle becomes ischemic and starts to die, lacks oxygen supply. The narrowing and hardening of arteries starts decades before the acute event. Decades before, this is true. It's actually, for example, even at my age, this process is occurring due to things that I'm doing right now. ApoB containing lipoproteins infiltrate the artery wall and accumulate over time at physiological levels, 20 to 40 milligrams per deciliter. ApoB particles with a diameter of 70 nanometers can freely enter and exit the artery wall. So keep in mind, if you remember your numbers, they were meaningfully higher than this. However, when plasma levels exceed this threshold, dose-dependent retention of cholesterol-rich APO-containing lipoproteins occurs in the artery wall. So what does this mean? Well, let's look at go back to your levels, Wayne. Hold on, milligrams per deciliter. Let's make sure we got the right. Yes, correct. So we're using the same metrics. So we are multiple times higher, a typical size of what can freely exit and enter without problems. So what do we do? Well, good thing, there are many different types. There are many different compounds that can support, or many different changes that we can do to support the improvement of these blood markers and your risk profile. So I'm about to show you that now. But I actually want to come back to what the naturopath recommended for you. And this is what I identified to be missing from your plan, was there didn't seem to be any due diligence around other significant markers of your health beyond the rheumatoid arthritis symptoms. And so that's what we want to bridge here. You know, we have some basic things which are good, and we have some supplements which are quite broad spectrum and may not have, I don't believe, have the equivalent sufficient dosages to move the needle in the direction we need. For example, zinc is very low in this particular supplement, and so we need to take another form of zinc in order to actually move that zinc levels up so they can provide you a protective effect. And so if these are helping with your pain, with your symptoms, with RA, then great. But I think that's really all it contributed to. The other second best thing that they gave you was the ubiquinol, CoQ10, which I'll show you later, has implications to cardiovascular disease and improving your lipids and blood pressure as well, which is really good. But there was this big low-hanging fruit. There's this like fire going on that I felt like was ignored and actually contributes in many ways, interacts with the RA symptoms. So I just wanted to point that out, that I believe that was a missing piece, and I can understand why, because it can be quite exhaustive and time-consuming and energy-consuming to look at everything, but that's what I'm here for. Now I'm going to walk you through the different nutraceuticals that I'm going to educate you on to improve your lipid profile and improve your chances of not dying as quickly and getting hospitalized, which I'll speak in that language because to really hammer home the point of the visceral emotion of what an experience like that would be like, which I have observed, which it can be quite intense and life-changing. And so I want to rather avoid that, which is why I speak in that language for you, because most people are very disconnected from an event like that. But maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Maybe you know family and friends. I'm not sure, but just in case. So this is from my blood work analysis course. I may not know, I run a school that educates mentors and teachers, health professionals, coaches and personal trainers to upskill them in these areas. And this is one of the modules that we do. And so that's what this is from. This is from my school that I teach, I run. All right. Now, if you want to pause the screen and look at some just a basic overview, we've covered a little bit of cholesterol, LDL, and things like that. But if you want to learn more and just get some insight, you can there. LDL, looking at the optimal HDL, APO protein B. I'm going to stop here. Protein produced by the liver that provides structural support for lipoproteins can initiate atherosclerosis, as we say, and contribute to plaque buildup and the rupture, which I showed you before. It's a more direct way to measure the LDL particle number, which may be more relevant for cardiovascular health. So this is just touching on, again, what we talked about. And now, into the actual change that you may make. We noticed a very simple change, and that is the effects of ginger on fasting blood sugar and so metabolic health, which is great because as you age, you become less efficient at being able to handle blood glucose, which again can contribute to this cascade of inflammatory pathways that drive disease and death. Something as simple as 2 grams of ginger for 12 weeks reduced ApoB. So that's one change. Another one is CoQ10, which you're already taking. You're already taking 150 milligrams. And they found that it also lowered lipoprotein. This was a different type of lipoprotein, but it's under the umbrella they usually interact. Another one is soluble fiber. So you being on a more plant-based diet, at least from when you messaged me, would be helping support this because fiber helps pick up excess cholesterol. And one change that would be effective even in conjunction with helping you with gut health is PHGG. This is a partially hydrolyzed guaiacol. It's a common compound that we use in gut protocols for people with gut issues like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And you may not have heard of that, but you would have because it's actually the IBS. So while we can increase, legumes content like lentils, chickpeas, black beans, what I typically find is that people's gut symptoms tend to get a little bit worse during that time because of the makeup of these lentils and legumes, and also the phytates in them, which can minimize absorption of other nutrients. And they can just be a little bit of a gut irritant in a lot of people. And so typically we would actually take them out and minimize them in most cases because not to exacerbate IBS-like symptoms, at least temporarily. But PHGG, that is something taken in about 10 grams per day, which can be quite effective. Then we see a compound called berberine, which is a chemical derivative of a plant. And 500 milligrams twice a day for 3 months. It's a compound I've also taken myself. This is a somewhat commonly used compound. Improved total cholesterol by 29%, triglycerides by 35%, and LDL by 25%. It's not typically going to be one compound in of itself that will be the be-all and end-all, although there are definitely ones that do a lot of the heavy lifting, but it's more of the concurrent combination of different changes that have a cumulative effect. That's one of them. And we just see some more evidence here. This is even 1.5 grams. Citrus bergamot, we see total cholesterol 12.3 to 31% decrease. LDL, even all the way up to a 40% decrease, which is quite impressive. Triglycerides, similar. And then how it's happening is inhibiting, if you remember from that diagram, the oxidation of that LDL, those low density lipoproteins. And in different dosages, it had different effects. So more isn't always better when you talk about supplementation, but they tend to have try not to use scientific terms. There tends to be a point of diminishing returns with supplements where more is not better, and they actually can have a negative effect if you do too much or no effect at all. So 500, even upwards of a gram, 1.5 grams in that other study. Another one called a black cumin seed, which I'm a very big fan of, also known as black seed oil, that's been commonly consumed in African cultures like my own for a very long time. So used indigenously a lot, used now therapeutically for its great benefit. Overwhelming data on black seed oil. It's really great for many things, including lipids. So liver enzymes, this is what this is contributing to. This is helping. ALT, AST, triglycerides drop, total cholesterol drop, HDL, LDL, VLDL, very low density lipoproteins. And so we are using a very evidence-based approach, as we should, as we do, not just things that are used on animals, but all of this is used on humans here. Another study, 2 grams, something you're taking now. I'm not sure if your naturopath explained, but it is a good thing you're taking ubiquinol, CoQ10. This was in patients who had a myocardial infarction, also known as a heart attack, 200 milligrams of CoQ10. So I would consider bumping up that by 150 to 200 milligrams to see a reduction in cholesterol. And this is an inflammatory pathway, interleukin-6, the reduction there. So if we go week 0, 133,
And remember, yours was 205 milligrams per deciliter, right? So typically, people who start from a higher base see a even stronger response, typically, with compounds like these. From 133 plus minus 13, which means there's a range there of not, it's on average on 133, all the way to 104 plus minus 13. So that is definitely a meaningful improvement. This study showed some mixed effect, significantly decreased total cholesterol. That might be a typo, or an HDL. No significant effects on LDL and lipoprotein A. We actually have a lipoprotein B we measured, and triglycerides. But in this study we see enough evidence to say, okay, this is probably something we should pay attention to, particularly the umbrella effect that CoQ10 has on other systems. But I did want to, objectively show you that this isn't all just everything is good. Not everything is showing amazing signs. We also see some mixed effects. So we'll see. Not everything is going to work in the way these studies are showing. You're an individual, and you will respond you respond in your way, which may or may not represent the average. Garlic, 20 grams of raw garlic. Now, I don't know how easy this is for you to do. Some people love garlic. Some people, this would be quite a bit. Put in your scale, you measure it out. Garlic and lemon juice, a very, very widely used compound throughout history and beyond, before we even have research, before we even had the scientific method to understand how to measure these things, is humans have been using garlic. The history of it is very, very, very long. 20 grams of raw garlic plus 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. That is group 1. And we can see, let's go LDL, 124, reduced down to 94, which is very, very impressive for a compound that is very cheap, like you can get from the supermarket. So that's pretty impressive. You can also take it in supplemental form called allicin as well. So these are just some more studies from here. Pomegranate peel, 2 times daily. This is non-alcohol fatty liver disease patients who also typically present with poor cholesterol. And now we get to one of my all-time favorites. If there is one thing, Wayne, one compound, you could only take one, I would probably make an argument that omega-3 fatty acids should be that. I'm going to take a moment here to explain. So in fatty fish, you have your DHA and EPA as your main omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3 fatty acids and fatty fish are also part of what is known as the Mediterranean diet, very high in the Mediterranean diet. And while you are previously taking a plant-based diet, what typically is a big piece that is missing that can really go a long way without the need for a lot of red meat is putting in consistent, almost daily, fatty fish intake. Low mercury fish, salmon, sardines, mackerel, anchovies. The acronym is SMASH, salmon, mackerel, anchovies, herring, that's the H. And I said them all in different order, particularly salmon. Having that daily will minimize your need for ongoing omega-3 fatty acids, omega-3 supplementation. And I'm trying to look at your diet here again. I don't believe I see any fish right now, or any fatty fish, as white fish does not confer the same benefit, does not have omega-3 fatty acids or the amount that we need. So this is going to be, and we see also omega-3 fatty acids playing a role in fatty fish, playing a role in reducing pain, physical pain, because it has inflammation resolving effects. And so for your rheumatoid arthritis symptoms, omega-3s can be quite effective too. But not just that, for heart health, lipids, brain health, it's very impressive and very overwhelming, the data on omega-3s, and something that should be taken very consistently, lifelong. I don't have your omega-3 status blood test, so I can't say exactly, but we can say with some precision of how much you should take, which I'll put in your document. But you want at least not the recommended daily intake, but I would be looking for someone of your age in your category of health, at least upwards of a gram a day of omega-3 fatty acids, which you can get from a 200-gram fillet of salmon or a can of sardines. And then we can see here all the incredible effects of how it's working, omega-3s. Yeah. Dyslipidemia, which is the dysfunctional elevation of your cholesterol markers, and how it can improve HDL, decrease triglycerides. I'm not going to go over all these things. Endothelial function, so the function of your actual blood vessels and how they're moving, and they're minimizing the risk of cardiovascular disease and that plaque formation, particularly by the buildup of inflammatory pathways and different pathways that control the expression of how your body utilizes fat, picks it up, takes it around. And so a lot of those processes become a lot more efficient. Your body becomes a lot better at being able to move blood around your body, put out fires, under this analogy, like putting out fires and healing tissue itself. So that is very, very positive. If we go all in all, we have a top overview of lipid lowering compounds. Here is your list: BCOs, black seed oil. And so we're not going to do all of these. I'm going to be using some my own judgment to decide, to educate you on which ones I believe are the most effective for you. But those, are our lipid lowering compounds that can have very meaningful effects, and not just on your lipids, but I want to emphasize that I'm not even showing you the benefits of a lot of these. For example, omega-3s on cognition and, the risks of things like Alzheimer's disease. And like I alluded to before, the rheumatoid arthritis and autoimmune-like symptoms that do involve pain. Or that omega-3 has also been studied in many studies of cognition and may improve even symptoms like depression and mental acuity and focus, or similar outcomes like that. All right, moving on from lipids, now we're going to go to your cardiometabolic markers. One of them is called homocysteine. Most doctors ignore this. Most people don't know about this. And I'm going to explain to you the link to Alzheimer's disease, declining cognition, and why it is important. So homocysteine reflects the status of three very important vitamins: folate, B12, and B6. And if you are deficient in any of these, you will see an elevated homocysteine. For yours, it is high. Optimal, you're going to see at least under 10. The ranges used here are quite conservative, but I want to definitely see it under 10. Homocysteine helps regulate, the nutrients related to homocysteine help processes in the body that help regulate genes and kind of switch them on and off, neurotransmitters. And vegans and plant-based consumers are particularly notorious for having a high homocysteine because they don't have B12, because it's very, very difficult to get enough B12 on a plant-based diet, which puts pressure on other nutrients like choline, which you're typically not getting when you are consuming a plant-based diet. I just want to double check. Yeah, and you're consuming eggs, but 4 eggs per week is absolutely not enough to hit the choline requirements. I've done the math on this. You need at least 2 a day. Particularly if you're not consuming a wide variety of other foods that also have choline in them, but it's difficult to get it because eggs are the highest. So not having this can put pressure on other processes in the body. With each 5 millimoles per liter increase in homocysteine, it's associated with approximately 20% increase in coronary heart disease risk. Every 5 that goes up, so we've gone from the optimal, every 5 that's increased, we see about a 20% increase, irrespective of diet. That's significant. But symptom-wise, when we see high homocysteine, we see cognitive function decrease, brain atrophy. I'm going to say what is associated with brain atrophy, schizophrenia, brain aging, gray matter reduction, dementia, Alzheimer's risk goes up. So that shows us the implications of the importance of these B vitamins, which typically go down when you have a consumption of typically a plant-based diet, or you're just not hitting enough nutrients through your diet, as most people don't. And so this emphasizes the importance of things like organ meats, eating nose to tail. And I can send you, if you want to go take a deeper dive, I can send you my framework for optimal eating to hit all your absolute minimums of your recommended daily intakes, and my framework for the optimal diet of how you would hit all of these and begin to move these needles and just live just what a truly healthy diet means, which most people don't do and don't understand. Because why would they? Because it's actually not simple in this modern age. It's become complex and confusing for people because people are saying completely contradictory things and they don't know how to base their ideas in principles and high quality evidence without dogma and emotionality. For the sake of brevity and time, I'm not going to take a deep dive into your thyroid, even though I think it's worth talking about. This will help to regulate your metabolism, what do we see here? Which is going in, this is thyroid stimulating hormone. This is going in a direction which I would be meaningfully concerned enough to test, particularly when I look at your T4 being on the lower end. We see these on the edges of their ranges. We may see either Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition often associated with rheumatoid arthritis and other lichen autoimmune conditions, which can contribute to symptoms like fatigue and pretty meaningfully affect people's ability to, or affect people's body composition as well. I'm just going to be able to cut through a lot of this explanation if I ask you to get your antibodies tested, thyroid antibodies tested, which I can send you a test for to get externally. But you are presenting with primary hypothyroidism, which is represented by high TSH and a lower T4, which also warrants me getting or recommending that you get your antibodies tested to see if there is some type of autoimmune disease that we need to intervene on. But the good thing is, many of the other compounds that I'm communicating to you actually can have a positive benefit on the thyroid gland itself as well. This, long story short, this becomes too high. What doctors will end up doing is giving you thyroxine and giving you supplemental thyroid hormones, which they say you will need to be on for the rest of your life. And sometimes you do, but I can show you at a later date if you want to do some more consultation with me and if these numbers do continue to elevate, I definitely do recommend that. If we see TSH go down, T4 continue to go down, that's the trend, then it is definitely recommended, again, to get those antibodies tested and see what's going on underneath, because this doesn't give us a lot of confidence. It just gives us an indication. And they will typically give you thyroid medication or some form of it. And then they'll tell you have to be on it for the rest of your life, and they'll continue to increase the dosage year after year after year as the levels continue to change and your body adapts to it. And long story short, your symptoms continue to get worse and you're not feeling good. So we can minimize that with a lot of the compounds that we are talking about today, but we don't have specificity to which ones could be best for your thyroid because I don't know exactly what's going on underneath the surface. So that's enough to say thyroid antibodies should be tested. CRP, high sensitive C-reactive protein. This is like another inflammatory marker. ESR is another one as well. Both of these are high. This could be because of the underlying RA. This could be also because driven by the lipids and the dyslipidemia. Vitamin D also plays a role in improving thyroid health as well. Vitamin D is on the lower end, particularly now coming into winter here in Australia for you. You will want, it will be in your best interest to supplement with my favorite brand, which is Thorne Vitamin D K2 at the upper limit of 4,000 IU per day in the morning, sublingually under your tongue. And that will help raise those levels, but it'll also help because we know vitamin D is not just a vitamin, it's a hormone that controls the expression of about 1/24 of the human genome. Incredibly important. It plays a very vital role in the immune system. We see vitamin D deficient patients, particularly during that time in 2020 to 2023, vitamin D deficient patients, zinc deficient patients had a meaningfully higher risk of getting that disease, which you know what I'm talking about. And so immune system, it plays a role. We even see studies on fatigue as well. And so it can also be helping your thyroid too. And I'll just touch on that there without doing another masterclass on vitamin D because I don't want you to be here for 2 hours. Now we get to the most abundant circulating steroid hormone in your body, DHEA. This is important for helping increase your muscle mass, bone remodeling, so minimizing fracture risk, improving your cardiovascular disease status. So we see a bit of an interaction here. If DHE is higher than it is now compared to being low, then your incidence for heart attacks change and improve. This is a precursor for testosterone, which yours is low, as you can see here in the total and the free testosterone, because DHEA is a precursor to these sex hormones. And when we see it low, it can also be linked to poor metabolic health, so hyperinsulinemia and other related metabolic conditions where your body's just not regulating your blood glucose and your pancreas isn't working as effectively. So there are other reasons, if people who are really stressed have maybe an adrenal insufficiency, a physiological stress that people experience that can drive the adrenal glands to produce a lot of cortisol and other hormones and decrease
DHEA as a result. Can be a little bit of an indicator for that. But you only work part-time, 30 hours a week. And from what I remember from your son, who I coach as well, as you know, I don't recall, maybe off, but I don't recall it to be particularly high stress. But if it is, then that could be showing us a little indication there. But I actually think I just wanted to explain to you why that was low, but I actually think there's a bigger conversation going on here when I look at your age, your situation, and your entire profile. And that is a conversation around testosterone replacement therapy. This is something your physician will have to talk to you about and can prescribe to you. And I can recommend clinics as well that help with this. But if you're looking for one of the most efficacious, effective ways to improve your quality of life, your energy, your vitality, your libido, your sexual function, your body composition, your cognition, your enthusiasm for life itself, this is not an exaggeration, then when someone is presenting in a hypogonadal state, which means their gonads are not producing enough testosterone, and they're presenting with low testosterone, which yours is definitely low, enough to the point where it would be contributing to symptoms. However, we're not just trying to chase numbers here. People can feel quite good at the numbers you're at. It's more important to actually check in with yourself and see, well, how are you feeling day to day? I know you did describe the symptoms that you have, brain fog and tiredness. What's contributing to that? How much it is from the testosterone? We won't know until we make a change. Doesn't matter to me as much what is contributing as much as just improving it in of itself. And so improving your testosterone here through something like TRT. I know we could talk about lifestyle. I know you're exercising a little bit. Ideally, you'd be weight training, 4 days a week, which would be a very big, meaningful contributor to your energy and vitality and just how you feel as a man. Improving muscle mass and decreasing body fat is one of the easiest lifestyle factors to fix to improve testosterone. But it's a habit and it's a behavior, and it requires some coaching for a lot of people. So I might need to coach you, like I do your son, to improve that, because it might not just be as simple as, I need you to start weight training now 4 days a week and sleeping eight hours of uninterrupted sleep a night. It's like, oh, how do I do that? Like, what happens when obstacles come in the way? 1 month on, 1 month off. Like, you have to be consistent with this and become the type of person that actually consistently wants to do those things. And so while that is being worked on, if that's something you want to work on, like absolutely weight training, I need to emphasize this, beyond any nutrition supplement, I can say in this conversation, we need you sleeping at least 8 hours a night of quality sleep, getting morning light exposure. That will help tremendously with your sleep and energy function. I'm not even going to get into it, actually, because it's going to be exhaustive. I can't explain to you these things, but if you can just hang with me here. Getting sunlight exposure on your skin at sunrise and when the sun is setting, sleeping 8 hours, improving your muscle mass and decreasing your fat mass. How much to decrease your fat mass? Where you don't have a pot belly and your abdominal wall is basically somewhat flat, waking up in the morning, and you have an amount of muscle mass that can fill out your average medium-sized t-shirt. Now, you're a taller guy, so you're not going to be having a medium-sized t-shirt, but you understand what I'm saying. These things will all improve your testosterone, your energy, your vitality, your quality of life tremendously, but they require behavior change. And after coaching 1,000 client patients, I understand that behavior change can be tricky and difficult for a lot of people. But I really want to emphasize that if you want to just save the money or save the effort of needing to be on supplements for such a considerable amount of time in the dosages that we're educating you on, then you can minimize a lot of that through exercise, sleep, light exposure, stress management, great hydration, environmental control, like environmental exposure. We can start talking about air quality and mold and other environmental exposures that can put a burden on your body systems, but that's kind of a little bit lower on the list here. But if all of those behavior changes are a little bit more tricky now or will take longer, then it emphasizes more of the point of TRT. And even if those behavior changes you do and 6 months later, you still don't notice a big difference, then it emphasizes again the point of considering TRT and bringing it up with your doctor. If your doctor's not supportive of this, I would find a new doctor, because TRT, and even in women, HRT, can literally give people back their lives and but minimize even people who are so depressed that they're suicidal. Like, the extent of the support that TRT can provide can be really meaningful. For some people, it can be quite moderate or a low effect, but it's a very low hanging fruit. Your doctor will explain this to you, but it would be something you would need to take for the rest of your life. or most likely take for the rest of your life. I don't want to say need, but you'll be in your best interest take for the rest of your life. You can take it orally. You don't need to inject yourself. And it would be something I would seriously consider. And at least if this starts a conversation that can move you in that direction, then that could be a very positive thing. So that will help nullify a lot of the conversation that I'm going to be having around your hormones if that's something that you're open to. But at least I wanted to bring it up to you because older men can really get back their life or improve their quality of life as a result of that. We're seeing things like mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration. This is your hematology. These are your red blood cells. Red blood cells and hemoglobin is on the lower end. This could be because of B12. This could be because of folate. This could be because of iron panel, your iron as well. It's likely a contribution of things going on here. And you being on a plant-based diet will make a lot of this worse. Why this is important is because you have these red blood cells that carry oxygen around your body and pick up oxygen, drop off carbon dioxide. Long story short, they have these little things called hemoglobin in them, and these are the actual oxygen carrying molecules themselves, and they, not a bad one. Okay, they're carried around the bloodstream, and when I talk about, get out of here, see that? When we talk about the derivatives of what they're made from, they have iron molecule attached to the hemoglobin. So when we see iron being deficient, we see your body's ability to regulate oxygen uptake is impacted dramatically. And that's a very big implicator in fatigue. Very, very big. Iron deficiency anemia is the most common nutrient deficiency in the world. And if you have lower iron, which let's have a look here, because I believe I did see it. Hold on. I did see it here. So transferrin saturation, which is how filled so we have these kind of boats that transport iron around the body. Think about this boat as being not very full if it's on the lower end, and that could be because of copper. That could also be because of iron. So I think you've done your copper as well, and your copper is on the lower end. So we're just trying to pass out, is it better to move copper, to move iron? What foods to potentially suggest for you to cover both the bases here, because we can do that effectively, would be incorporating a consistent beef liver intake and oysters, which will contain a high amount of B12, a high amount of beef liver won't contain a high amount of iron, but it will contain a high amount of copper and B12 and B vitamins that will help improve your red blood cells. Your red blood cells are so important because it's literally the oxygen. It's implicated in the oxygen that fuels your body, that fuels your brain, that gives you energy. If I can speak in the lay terms like that. And so one change I would be considering is improving copper, improving iron from quality organ-based food, which is some of the most nutrient-dense food on the planet. Oysters being the richest source in zinc, so we can help improve your zinc status and in your immune system. And your sexual function has implications in that too. And improve your copper at the same time, which could improve your red blood cells, your fatigue, your ability, even when you're training, when you're exercising, you should feel like you have better energy. It's commonly what people report. And then we can also look into iron if at a later date, if we don't see that improve, then we can look into an iron-based support for you as well. And it's not an iron supplement like ferrocrat C. It's not that. Ferritin is high, another inflammatory, it's called acute phase reactant. So when we see this high, we see also inflammation. It's a being indicator of inflammation. So there's definitely many markers, ESR, CRP, ferritin, that are indicating inflammation going on, which is necessitating probably the need or the recommendation for things that reduce inflammation, like omega-3 fatty acids and many of the other compounds we talked about. And then we see the last one I want to show you is GGT. While it's above optimal and not out of range too much, it's actually quite ignored by a lot of practitioners. And then we have the last one, which is GGT. GGT is really important. It helps play a role in detoxification from the environment and from things you consume. And also, it will be liberated, and we see it high when people consume quite a bit of alcohol. And it is liberated and put into the body, or your body produces more of it from the liver following cell damage or some type of cell destruction that's going on, which may be implicated in some of the other things that we've talked about so far. We don't want to see this go too high. We want to ideally keep it under 20. And what we can do for that is use something like N-acetylcysteine or glutathione. And this will help. I want you to think of this one right here as when you go get your car serviced, there's certain things that you need to do that you don't really notice the impacts of on the actual car quality. But if you don't do into the future, then you'll notice it. Like the timing belt will go. So I want you to think, you can almost think of GGT. You actually think of a lot of these things we've talked about, but GGT is like, well, some of the supplements and the foods and the changes you make, you won't necessarily notice a symptom improvement, Wayne. But I want you to know, just because you don't notice an immediate symptom improvement, it doesn't mean that we're not having a positive effect. Because just like you don't really, when you drive a car, you can't tell if the timing belt is going to go 5 years from now, right? You can't tell if a heart attack is going to come 3 years from now. But when you look under the hood and you get a qualified mechanic or a qualified functional health practitioner to look under the hood and be like, okay, this is going in a direction that if it keeps going and you don't make this oil change, or you don't change these spark plugs, or you don't replace this carburetor, that you're going to encounter an issue. And you might say, nah, don't worry about it, it's too expensive. Like, okay, well, and you'll be back with them in 5 years having to pay thousands of dollars. Well, the equivalent is you might be in the hospital 5 years from now having to get a stent put in your heart, and then you make the change. So that's like a dramatic, exaggerated example, but I'm just trying to emphasize the point that I know it can be a hard sell when I'm trying to distill 10 years of education into like something like an hour for you into the importance of some of these things. So I acknowledge that it's time, energy, money, and sustainability of actually doing a certain habit for a long period of time. And I don't want to give you anything, or don't want to suggest anything and educate you on things that we're just maybes on. Like these are high confidence changes to make, and acknowledging that just because you're taking it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to notice a symptom improvement immediately, but you're going to be investing in the health and vitality and the minimization of risk of future Wayne, so he can be around for his children, his grandchildren, his family, and his friends for longer. So summarizing, we didn't even touch on blood pressure, did we? Before we leave, we need to touch on blood pressure because it's implicated in all this very significantly. Yours is 143/90. We'd want to test this recurrently because to make sure this isn't an outlier. One blood pressure reading does not necessarily give us enough confidence, but I'm going to roll with it because given the other issues going on, I think this is relevant and reliable. The old blood pressure guidelines suggest that your range would only be grade 1 mild hypertension, but the new guidelines actually state that you are stage 2 hypertension, which emphasizes this is a good thing that they've updated the guidelines, but some physicians, doctors actually don't know this, unfortunately, sadly. So considering that, we want to move it in the direction to be around 120/80. Blood pressure is one of the strongest. Blood pressure is such a strong implicator in cardiovascular disease. It is linearly associated, meaning when we see blood pressure go up, we see a directional increased risk of disease. It goes up. It's just up. I just want to get that point across. To improve blood pressure, there's a lot of things. One of the most effective is drop your body fat, is drop your weight. It is the most effective thing, which comes back to the conversation about improving muscle mass, weight training, diet, and things like that. You could just start and stop there, and we could move that down by about 10 points. But supplements that will support this will be omega-3s, your dietary fiber, like partially hydrolyzed guar gum. If magnesium is down, it can also actually drive GGT, which we saw going up. So putting in more magnesium will support that detoxification, and it will also support your blood pressure as well. So now we can start to see a concurrent effect. So a lot of these actually have an umbrella impact on each other, which is really great. Salt is actually quite nuanced and isn't as implicated. It depends if you're salt sensitive and how low your potassium is. Another change that I would suggest is having a liter of coconut water per day to increase potassium. And if that's not doable, then we can look at potassium supplement. That is going to be very important for energy production, exercise performance, but particularly blood pressure. And it's only 1% of the population is consuming enough potassium. It is, like everyone's basically deficient. Each 1 mercury drop down in blood pressure for each 1 kilo weight loss. So it's 1 to 1. So that's great. So if you lose 5 kilos, 5 down. We also see pomegranate and beetroot juice. That also helps your blood vessels. We see it using in athletes. I use it myself, training performance, and we also see it being used to, if there's any erection problems or ED problems, you can also use this to help vasodilation. The blood vessels dilate and to drive a greater production of nitrates in your body to help that vasodilation. You could start with a cup, 250 mils a day, particularly before training or before sex even. And the need for things like your Viagra's, I don't know if you use it, but if you do, the need for it may actually go down. But for your heart, vascular health, very important. We see garlic here again, actually yielding an effect on blood pressure we saw before with lipids. So now 2 for 1. Again, black seed oil or Nigella sativa is another term for it. 2.5 mils, 2 days a week for 8 weeks. Meaningful reduction, like 10% reduction in systolic and diastolic. Systolic is the top number, the 120. Diastolic is the bottom number, 80. CoQ10, so you're taking CoQ10, which is good, 150 milligrams. So this is 12 weeks at 60 milligrams, resulted in this improvement. Amazing. Omega-3s, we've talked about that. Very powerful and impactful. We studied, big study here, 291 untreated, mildly hypertensive, which is very similar to you. 2 out of 4 studies, so half of the studies, the blood pressure fell by around 5 and 3.5, systolic, diastolic. Great. Dietary approaches. Yes, we actually do see plant-based diets improving hypertension, or the DASH diet, which is a kind of like a pseudo plant-based diet because there is some dairy still in there and some lean meat and poultry, but it's just a little bit less than usual. But we typically see the improvement in that is because people are coming from typically the Western diet and they're making positive changes to go from the standard American diet, standard Western diet, to this type of diet, which has more plants in it, tends to eliminate some of the more processed, hyperpalatable foods, which are driving these outcomes which are negative. So it can be a little bit difficult to pass out. Is it the plants doing it, or is it the reduction in the shitty food doing it? It's more like, we typically see it's more likely actually the reduction in the shitty food and the high excess consumption of sugars and saturated fat, which is typically making the improvement rather than the plants themselves, though the fiber, like the soluble fiber, actually does improve things like lipids. So just nuance. Soluble fiber, berberine, black seed oil. Oh, we're coming back to the lipids, okay? And in summary, the risk profile for you, Wayne, is around hyperlipidemia, blood sugar dysregulation, inflammation, oxidative stress, hypertension. Your long-term corticosteroid use can exacerbate existing cardiovascular risk by promoting insulin resistance, weight gain, fluid retention, and adversely affecting lipid metabolism. So that is something to consider, which we didn't even talk about, is that the medication for the RA could be driving these outcomes to be worse, or some of the markers to be worse, which could drive the outcomes. A comprehensive population-based cohort study, 87,000 patients with immune-mediated inflammatory disease, found a dose-dependent, so it means as the dosage of the medication went up, the actual disease risk went up, associated with oral glucocorticoid use. Notably, patients taking less than 5 milligrams daily had a twofold higher increase of developing cardiovascular disease compared to non-users. So right now, last time we spoke, you're on 10, but you're decreasing. Maybe you're even on less now. That would be good. For those on doses of 25 milligrams or more, I know this is not you, the risk was 6 times higher. So it shows the directional change. So pretty important here. So this is where you could make an argument. It's like, okay, could we drop, I'm not telling you to do this. This is something you can only do with your physician. Could we drop the medication down as we build up improving the lifestyle, nutritional, and supplemental interventions where you're not getting the downsides of these? Because the benefits of the supplements is they come with less trade-offs. They come with less side effects. The benefits of the medication is they're very effective typically at improving the certain symptom, typically. So it's a big hammer, but comes with some collateral damage. With supplements, they're not as big of a hammer. They're more targeted, more specific. You have to really have a discerning eye about understanding what to use and where, but they often don't come with trade-offs. You want to make sure you double check with the medication. Just double check with your doctor, like run him through all the supplements, see if there's any contraindications. I don't believe there would be, but you just need to check with him or her just to be safe. But everything we're using here, and I'll add dosages and out on my practitioner portal. I'll be able to order you some of these once you watch it. Let me know once you've watched this. And then on the practitioner portal, I'll be able to order these. You'll have the dosages. Everything on this list, just so you know, is something that we commonly use. These aren't very obscure. These are off the shelf things that you can get. Everything on here you can get. So I'm going to give you specificity to that later. And what we want to do from a retesting perspective is in about 3 to 6 months' time, anywhere between 3 to 6 months' time, ideally about, if I can go in the middle, about 4 months after consistent consumption and consistent intervention of these changes, very important that I underline the word consistent, because difference between taking something 4 days a week or 5 days a week out of 7 days a week can actually be the difference between something working in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. And it can often be a tipping point to which it starts to work. And so you don't notice, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. Oh, all of a sudden I noticed like 30% improvement. So really necessitates the importance of consistency with this. So if I can help with that, you let me know. And retesting the blood panel in about 4 months, faster turnaround because of your age, your risk profile. And then from there, goal is not to be on everything forever. It's to have a food-based and a lifestyle approach as a priority, and then use these things to support your longevity and your quality of life in an amount that sustains you and doesn't need to get you out of the deficit. So you're going to need more of a human needs more of a higher dose to get them out from a deficient state than to maintain a certain state. I want to consider that there's all these supplements and all these changes, they're not necessarily needing to be had, except the lifestyle ones, needing to be done forever. That's not the point. Change them as your status and your health improves, which is one reason why we need to retest many times to see the direction of the change. So Wayne, I hope that was informative. I know this was a long one for you, but I wanted to do my due diligence and really explain things to you in a comprehensive manner. This one took me a while to get back to you, is because I really wanted to make sure that I had done enough or gone above and beyond for you because of the risk profile presented and the significance that it can pose on your life, and also the opportunity that you have now available to you to really improve the quality of your life. And this very small investment that you've made has the potential to actually put years of quality life in your life, which is incredibly profound. So I'll speak to you soon, and you let me know if you have any questions or follow-ups from here.